Hey there, Internet Travelers. I am the Redcap, and today we're going to answer the question, can an elite special teams unit fix the Chicago Bears? Let's find out. Before we jump into the story, let's talk about the phases of football. As some of you know, there are three phases of football: waxing, waning, and gibbous. Wait, those are phases of the moon. Hold on. Okay, where were we? Ah yes, the three phases of football: offense, defense, and special teams. They're like a coach's three children. The offense is the golden child who receives the majority of the credit. The defense is the older sibling who is relied upon to be the responsible one and not make mistakes. Lastly, special teams are the forgotten middle child. They go about living their life and really only receive attention when they screw something up. Although often overlooked, it's still an extremely important phase. It's not a phase, Mom! Shh, honey, go back into the practice facility. You're scaring the other players. In 2022, the Chicago Bears made what some would call a questionable coaching hire. They hired Berky Bareman. He had zero NFL coaching experience but was known throughout the land as a special teams guru. He essentially redefined the special teams phase as we know it today. It's not a phase! Young man, get back into the practice facility right now. This is your last warning. Sorry about that, kids these days. The rest of the league may have doubted Berky, but he had access to something that they didn't. An ancient, all-powerful being who could simulate seasons for him to see how things would unfold. Utilizing this power, Berky was able to simulate 10 seasons with his current roster of players. The results were underwhelming. In 10 seasons, they only managed to make the playoffs once with a 9-8 record. They averaged 6.1 wins and 10.9 losses. That just wouldn't do. The eyes of the NFL were on Berky, and he knew that every misstep would be magnified tenfold. He had two options. He could revert to the status quo and try to be what the NFL wanted him to be. Or, he could lean on what he knew best: special teams. The Bears had decent specialists now, but in order to be successful, Berky needed three players: a kicker, a punter, and a returner. He knew just where to find them. Berky knew the punter he wanted, but wasn't sure if management would get on board. This punter was unlike anything the NFL had ever seen. In fact, if you saw him on the street, you'd never assume he had any shred of athletic ability. Hailing from Valdosta State, it's Raiden DeFridge. Raiden was as surprised as anyone when he got the call from Berky. Someone wanted him to play in the NFL? They invited him to the combine, and it was the most embarrassing experience of his life. He scored a 0 on his RAS. For those of you who don't know, RAS stands for Relative Athletic Score. It's a test to see how athletic your relatives are. Unfortunately for Raiden, everyone in his family was even bigger than him. Looks can be deceiving though. He may not look like an NFL player, but one thing is for sure: Raiden DeFridge can kick the ever-living shit out of a football. 1 down, 2 to go. Berky went to Campbell University to find his return specialist, a young man by the name of Him Jimmins. This kid is sick. While playing for the Fighting Camels, he set every return record that existed. There's a reason he only returns kicks though. He's listed as a wide receiver, but that's just a title. He can't catch a ball to save his life. It's like his brain only has enough power to use his hands or his feet, but not both. But goddamn, when he uses his feet, he is so fast.
How fast is he?
He's so fast that what you're seeing on the screen is not a still image. It's a video of Him Jimmins running by the camera. Hold on, let me slow it down as much as I possibly can to see if we can get a glimpse. His body defies physics. Watch here as his feet leave impressions in the snow, but his body doesn't. Incredible. Him Jimmins is so fast he makes Devin Hester look like Raiden DeFridge. He took the opening kickoff of the season back for a touchdown and never looked back. The final member that Berky signed was Mintz McVan, a kicker out of Central Connecticut State. Mintz would describe himself in 3 words: dumb, tough, kick. If he had any athletic ability, he would have played any other position. Hands down, the toughest person on the team. He was an incredible kicker and he hated it. I think that's why he was able to kick so well. He channeled all of his anger and punished the ball with every kick. Unfortunately, his brains, or lack thereof, were initially his downfall. He scored a 0 on the Wonderlic, and that scared every team away from him. You get 1 point just for writing your name. There was a reason that Berky chose these 3 players. They were just like him. The NFL had dismissed them from the get-go, and that would be their mistake. Through the first half of the season, the Bears were 5-3. From an outside perspective, it was an okay record. However, based on the simulations, they were already 1 win away from matching their 10-season average. His 3 experimental signings were working out phenomenally. They kept their momentum through the rest of the season and steamrolled their way into the playoffs. They finished with a 12-5 record, the second best mark in the league. At one point, they even broke the scoreboard. It says that Miles Sanders ran -2 yards for a touchdown and then gave 2 points to the Bears. Can you believe Madden has never won Game of the Year?
Hold on. How do we know that these special teamers were the reason that the Bears were doing so much better?
I'm glad you asked, my nerdy friend. Let's start with the return game. Through 10 simulated seasons, here's the breakdown of the normal Bears returners and their average numbers. In one season, Him Jimmins had 4,000 return yards on 42.2 yards per return with 12 touchdowns. If we look at punt returns, it's even more egregious. Himothy had more yards and touchdowns than all 10 seasons combined. Even if he didn't score, his returns helped set them up with better field position. For example, in 2022, the real-life Chicago Bears' average starting field position was the 25-yard line. With Him Jimmins, their average starting field position was the 35-yard line. What if I told you that teams that start at the 35-yard line are 67% more likely to score than teams that start at the 25? Sounds crazy, right? Well, it is crazy because I just made all that up, but damn, it sounded true, didn't it? To the Bears' credit, their previous punter Trenton Gill was actually pretty good. Despite being a 69 overall, 70 overall,
Not nice.
his numbers are respectable. There's a difference between a good punter and the greatest punter that's ever lived. Everything about Raiden DeFridge is big, including his punting numbers. He punted less, but for maybe the only time in his life, Raiden was focused on quality, not quantity. His net average is higher than Gill's total punt average, and 74% of his punts landed inside the 20. The kicker position is often overlooked by NFL fans, but especially by Madden. I still haven't forgiven them for how they treated Bobby Boots. Mince McVan might be the most unheralded addition to the team, but he also might be the biggest upgrade. He had 25 more field goals than the 10-season average and 20 more extra points. He weirdly finished with the same extra point percentage though.
Okay, look, I'm not saying that they didn't contribute, but listen to yourself. More extra points, less punts, that sure sounds like an offense that's playing better to me.
Well, you see, my nerdy friend, the numbers don't lie and they spell disaster for you. Let's look at the numbers from the 10-season simulations. They average out to 3,800 passing yards, 2,000 rushing yards, and 23.6 points per game. If we pull up our stats for this season, we'll find that they're below average with a few exceptions: total yards, which includes return yards, and points per game. They scored a few more passing and rushing touchdowns as well, but not enough to account for the uptick in points per game.
Wait, I can't find my calculator, just wait.
Now, let's move to the defense. Through 10 simulated seasons, they averaged 4,500 passing yards, 2,000 rushing yards, and 486 total points. I have no idea why Madden does points per game for offense and total points for defense. Hashtag just Madden things. This year's defense was actually worse than the average. They gave up more passing yards and more points. They also only managed to grab 2 fumbles, but that also seems like hashtag just Madden things. A bunch of teams finished with 0 fumbles and every single team finished with an even amount. Weird. People laughed and mocked the Bears for hiring Berky Bareman. Well, who's laughing now? Well, it looks like the Bucs are laughing now. They beat the Bears in a game that wasn't nearly as close as it looked. If it wasn't for the play of their special teams, the Bears wouldn't have even been competitive. Between kicker Mince McVan and returner Him Jimmins, they contributed 43 of the 49 points that the Bears scored. Still, Bears fans had to be excited for the future. In theory, everyone else was going to get better and their special teams were set for the next decade. They sang the praises of Berky Bareman to anyone who would listen. Berky couldn't believe it himself. He didn't share this information with anyone else, but he had done a simulation with the trio that he added. The results were not exactly what one would call promising. In fact, they were almost exactly the same as all the other simulations. He believed in his players and his coaching ability though. Maybe the man in the sky isn't as smart as he thinks. Hey. Tragically, the dream was over before it ever truly began. On the same day, all 3 of our heroes died in freak accidents. Him Jimmins, returner extraordinaire, was a victim of his own hubris and a slight miscommunication. He was competing in a pay-per-view race against a speeding bullet. Sadly, there was some confusion about the starting point. They ended up on opposite ends of the track, and well, you get the picture. Mince McVan, our lovable oaf of a kicker, was a victim of his own stupidity. He woke up one day and forgot that he needed to breathe. His lungs were screaming at him to inhale, but he thought it was just his body being weak. He toughed it out until he lost consciousness. His head slammed against a countertop and he never woke up. Lastly, we have our portly punter, Raiden DeFridge. His is perhaps the saddest of all. He decided that he was tired of being fat and vowed to lose all of his excess weight. Raiden became an avid outdoorsman and loved the mountains. He was mid-hike when he lost his footing. His body began to roll down the hill, and being as round as he was, he started to pick up a ton of speed. Nearby to the mountain he was hiking was an X Games event. Raiden's body crashed through the fence surrounding the event and his tumbling mass flew off of a ramp. He didn't survive the impact. The X Games judges gave him a gold medal for the effort, and I think you would have liked that. These 3 young men were taken from us too early. I've started a GoFundMe in their honor. Donating is very simple. Every like, comment, and subscription counts as $1 donated to their funeral costs. How does that work? Look, I'm not going to bore you with details. Share this with as many people as you can so we can meet our donation goal of $100 million.